Good morning. This morning we're going to read Black Beauty again. This is our third day, and we're going to start here at page 30. Do you remember what happened with Black Beauty? Do you remember Ginger, one of the horses in the stable? Do you remember James, the stable boy? A few months later, James the stable boy was allowed to practice driving, for he was soon going to be taking a job as a groom in another place. With Ginger and Black Beauty harnessed to the carriage, the master had James take him wherever he wanted to go. Black Beauty was delighted with the number of places they went to in the city on Saturdays and the queer streets that they were driving through. They were sure to go to the railroad station just as the train was coming in, and cabs and carriages and cart buses were all trying to get over the bridge together. It was very good practice for James and the two horses. One day the master and mistress decided to visit friends some distance away. Black Beauty and Ginger were harnessed to the carriage, and off they went. At sundown they stopped for the night at a pleasant hotel, which had stables and coach houses at the farther end of the yard. James saw to it that Black Beauty and Ginger were rubbed down, cleaned, and fed. Later in the evening another traveler's horse was brought in, and while the hostler was cleaning him, a young man with a pipe in his mouth lounged into the stable to gossip. "I say, Toller," said the hostler, "climb up to the left and throw some hay down for this horse, will you? But put down that pipe first." "All right," said the young man, and up he went. He tossed down the hay, and soon the horses were alone again. James came in to have a look at Black Beauty and Ginger before he went to bed, and then the door was locked. Black Beauty did not know how long he slept or what time it was, but he woke up suddenly feeling very uncomfortable. He heard Ginger coughing and one of the other horses moving about restlessly. It was dark, and he could see nothing, but the stable was full of smoke, and he could hardly breathe. The trap door to the loft had been left open, and it seemed to Black Beauty that the smoke came from there. He listened and heard a soft rushing sort of noise and a low crackling and snapping. There was something so strange in the sound that it made him tremble all over. The other horses were all awake now. Some were pulling at their halters, others were stamping. At last Black Beauty heard steps outside, and the hostler who had put them up the last horse burst into the stable with a lantern. He began to untie the horses to lead them out, but he was in such a hurry and seemed so frightened that he frightened the horses still more. Not one, not even Black Beauty, would go with him. They were foolish, of course, but danger lay all around. There was nobody with them whom they could trust, and everything was all so strange. As Black Beauty looked up, he saw a red light flickering on the wall. Then he heard a cry of "Fire! Fire!" outside, and an old hostler came in quickly and quietly. He was so calm that he did not scare the horses. He got one horse out of the stall and went to another. The next thing Black Beauty heard was the voice of James, quiet and cheery, as it always was. "Come, Beauty, on with your bridle, my boy, and we'll soon be out of the smoke." The bridle was on in no time, and then James took the scarf off his neck and tied it lightly over Black Beauty's eyes, patting and coaxing and speaking gently. He led Black Beauty out of the stable, safe in the yard. He slipped the scarf off of the horse's eyes and shouted, "Here, somebody, take the horse while I go back in for the other." A tall man took hold of Black Beauty's bridle, and James darted back into the stable. Black Beauty set up a shrill whinny as he saw him go. Ginger told Black Beauty afterwards that his whinnying was the best thing he could have done for her. If she hadn't heard him outside, she would never have had the courage to come out. And Black Beauty told Ginger that he had been frightened too, but as soon as he had heard James's voice in the stable, he had known that they both would be all right, for James was their friend. By the time the fire engines arrived, James was leading Black Beauty and Ginger to another stable, and there they spent the rest of the night, safe from all danger. In the morning, James went back to the hotel to see about the harness and carriage, and when he returned, Black Beauty heard him tell the hostler it was Toller's pipe that had started the fire. Black Beauty remembered John's rule never to allow a pipe in the stable, and thought it ought to be a rule everywhere. One evening, after the Gordons, Black Beauty, and Ginger had returned to Birtwick Park, James and John were talking in the stable. "Who is going to take my place when I leave?" James asked. "Little Joe Green at the lodge," said John. "Why, he's just a child," James protested. "He's 14 and a half, said John. "He's small, but he's quick and willing and kind-hearted. He wants very much to come. His father would like it, and the master wants to give him a chance, just as he gave me my chance long ago when my father and mother died." So the next day, Joe Green came to the stable to learn all he could before James left. He was a nice, bright little fellow, and always came whistling to work. A few nights after James had left, Black Beauty had eaten his hay and laying down on his straw, fast asleep, when he was suddenly awakened by the loud ringing of the stable bell. He heard the door of John's house open and then the sound of running feet. In a moment, John was in the stable, putting on Black Beauty's saddle and bridle. Up to the door of Birtwick Hall they went together at a quick trot. The squire stood there with a lamp in hand. "Now, John," he said, "you must ride for your mistress' life. Take this note to Dr. White. Then give your horse a rest at the inn and be back as soon as you can." John said, "Yes, sir," and was off in a minute, and through the park and the village and down the hill to the toll gate. John shouted and thumped on the door. The man came out and threw open the gate. "Keep the gate open for the doctor," called John. "Here's the money." And away he went. There was a long stretch of level road along the river, John said. "Now, Beauty, do your best." And Beauty did. He needed no whip. For 2 miles he galloped as fast as he could, as if he were in a race. When they came to the bridge, John pulled him up a little and patted his neck. "Well done, old fellow," he said, and then they were off as fast as before. The air was frosty, the moon was bright, and it was very pleasant. They went through another village, through a dark wood, up a hill and down, till after an 8-mile run they came to the town. All was still except for the clatter of Black Beauty's feet on the stones. As they drew up at Dr. White's door, the clock in the church tower struck 3. John rang the bell and pounded on the door. An upstairs window opened, and out came Dr. White's head. "What do you want?" he called. "Mrs. Gordon is very ill, sir. Master wants you to come right away. He thinks she'll die if you can't get there. Here's a note." "Wait," said the doctor. "I'll be right down." He closed the window and was soon at the door. "The worst of it is," he said, "my horse has been on the go all day and is worn out. My son has taken the other horse. May I use yours?" "He has come at a gallop nearly all the way, sir," said John, "and I was to give him a rest here. But I know my master wants you to get here in a hurry, so I guess he would not object." "All right," said the doctor. "I'll be ready in a minute." Black Beauty was very hot, and he was glad to stand there while John stroked his neck. Soon the doctor came out with his riding whip. "You won't need that, sir," said John. "Black Beauty will go till he drops. Take care of him, sir, if you can. I wouldn't want any harm to come to him." "No, John, of course not," said the doctor. The way back to Birtwick Hall was even harder. The doctor was a heavier man than John, and not so good as a rider, but Black Beauty did his best. Little Joe Green was waiting at the lodge gate, and Squire Gordon was at the hall door, for he had heard them coming. The doctor went to the house with the squire, and Joe led Black Beauty to the stable. Poor Beauty! He was glad to get home, for his legs shook under him, and he could only stand and pant. There was not a dry hair on his body. The water ran down his legs, and he steamed all over. Joe still had much to learn. He rubbed the horse's legs and chest, but he did not cover him with a warm blanket. He thought Black Beauty would be too hot. Then Joe gave him a pail of cold water to drink, put hay and corn in front of him, and thinking he had done all the right things, went away. Soon Black Beauty began to shake and tremble. He felt freezing cold and he ached all over. Oh, how he wished for his warm, thick blanket and for John to come. But John had 8 miles to walk. Black Beauty lay down on the straw and tried to sleep. At last, he heard John at the door. He gave a low moan, for he was in great pain. In a moment, John was at his side, stooping down over the horse. Black Beauty could not tell him how he felt, but John seemed to know. Quickly he covered the poor horse with 2 or 3 blankets and then ran to the house for hot water. He made some warm gruel, which Black Beauty drank. All this time John was talking to himself, and he seemed very angry. "Stupid boy," he kept saying, "no blanket, and I'll bet the water was cold, too." Black Beauty was very sick. John nursed him night and day, and the horse doctor came to see him every day. Little Joe Green was broken-hearted to think he had let Black Beauty get sick, all because he didn't know the right things to do. The master came out to the stable often to see his favorite. "My poor Beauty," he said one day. "My good horse, you saved your mistress's life, Beauty. Yes, you saved her life." Of course, Black Beauty was very glad to hear that, and slowly he began to get better. Then everyone was happier at Birtwick Hall. We're going to stop here for today, and we'll read some more pages tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed the 3rd reading of Black Beauty. Love you. Grandma.